Welcome to the Dairy News and Views podcast, a production of the Iowa State University Extension and Outreach Dairy Team. Our podcast covers current educational, research, and industry tools available for your operation to manage healthy cows and calves while producing the highest quality dairy products.
Thanks for joining us today on Dairy News and Views from the ISU Dairy Team. I'm Jen Bentley, Northeast Iowa Dairy Field Specialist, and I'm here with my colleague Gail Carpenter, Assistant Professor and Dairy Extension and Outreach Specialist with Iowa State University. And we're excited today to have on our show our Dairy Challenge colleagues as we discuss how Dairy Challenge has worked and impacted the dairy industry, particularly dairy science students as they attend this contest, and how it also could affect the industry or impact the industry. So welcome back to the podcast, Gail.
Great to be here, Jen.
Yeah, so before we were starting to record, we were just kind of discussing a little bit about Dairy Challenge and asking, who's all participated. And I was telling Gail that, I participated in Dairy Challenge now. It's been 20 years ago, and it must have been one of the first Dairy Challenge contests. So it's a long-standing contest, and I'm excited to hear how it's grown over the years and the ways that it's changed. And it really seems like it's a great opportunity for students. So as we talk about this, Gail, why don't you introduce our guests here today?
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, I'm joined today by Michael Goldie from Smacks Tech and Tara Montgomery from UW-Platteville. We are all involved with the Midwest Regional Planning Committee for the Midwest Regional Dairy Challenge, and we're excited to talk about Dairy Challenge today. I was a Dairy Challenge participant as well. A few years after you, only a few years after you though. I participated in 2010, and that year it was out in California. So we got a trip to California from Michigan in spring, and that was really exciting for all of us. And Dairy Challenges is something that I've always been really passionate about. I understand from my own personal experience how impactful it can be to a student, and I've seen as I've kind of progressed through my career how it can be impactful to the industry as well. So I was a participant in that national contest, and since then I've coached a few teams. Before this position, I coached at the University of Guelph at the Ridgetown campus. We used to take a regional team to the Midwest contest. I volunteered when I was in industry. I still volunteered with Dairy Challenge, and now I have the opportunity to be coaching the Iowa State team, as well as participating on the Midwest Regional Planning Committee, and I serve on the national board. So I am all about Dairy Challenge. And Michael, you said that you did not participate in Dairy Challenge. How did you get involved?
So yeah, I would say that's probably one of my biggest professional regrets is that Dairy Challenge kind of did not go across my plate when I was at college at the University of Wisconsin. But when I started my professional career, the company that I was working with previously was a sponsor of Dairy Challenge. And back in 2014, I had an opportunity to just be a regular volunteer at a Midwest regional contest, and that kind of sparked my interest in this unique and really exciting program where we give students the opportunity to kind of walk in the boots of normal consultants and really prepare themselves either to be able to work with consultants if they're going back home to their own farm, or to build skills that they're going to be able to utilize if they come to this side of the industry. So I've been active in many different roles in Dairy Challenge, working from volunteer coordinator for the Midwest. I am the chair of the Midwest Planning Committee this year. And then I've also been lucky enough to serve as a judge at the national contest and a judge coordinator at the national contest last year in Green Bay. So very excited to spend time working with everybody who's interested in moving Dairy Challenge forward. And it's a absolutely awesome experience.
And what about you, Tara?
So I did not participate in Dairy Challenge. When I went to school, I was at UW River Falls, and I was actually an equine science major. So I'm completely outside of dairy when I was going to school. But I started here at UW-Platteville in 2009, and we had a few students participating, and they would come back to class and talk about all the fun that they had, but how they really felt like they were missing out because they would talk to students from UW-Madison and Iowa State University and some of the other Research One universities and felt like we could be doing more. So we started to change some of our curriculum a little bit to sort of keep up with what industry needed. And that was one of the best ways that we found out how we needed to, kind of get students prepared, was talking to the folks in Dairy Challenge. And so after a couple of years being here, I started as the coach of our Dairy Challenge team. And in 2016, had an opportunity to host with Southwest Tech And then after that, I became part of the planning committee. And so it's really been a lot of fun to get to know more people in the industry, get to know more people across the different universities that are part of the Midwest contest, but also nationally, because we really are a very small group of people ultimately. But I love being able to talk to my students about how Dairy Challenge has benefited them, not just while they're in school, but then after they're done, and the networking that they got to do and how it gave them opportunities in their career. And I even had one student a couple of years ago who met his match from Ohio State University, and they've been married for quite a few years now, and they have 2 kids. So Dairy Challenge brings people together in more ways than one.
Not just professional development, but personal development as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's great to hear all the different stories and what it brings out in people and how it advances them forward into whatever career they're going to go into, right? Because there's a lot of skills that can be developed out of Dairy Challenge. Maybe for our listeners who may not be as familiar with the Dairy Challenge, if you could give us just a little bit more background of what Dairy Challenge is, where it started, and where it is today.
So this is actually our 20th anniversary of the National Dairy Challenge contest. So Jen, you said you were one of the first teams that got to participate. This was the contest started in 2002 and was hosted by my alma mater at Michigan State University. And there were 14 schools that participated at the time. So it was a little bit smaller than the contest that we know today. In 20 years, we've had about 240 host farms, about over 6,000 volunteers in total that have supported the event. And between all of the Dairy Challenge contests and Academy, we've had over nearly 9,000 university students participate in Dairy Challenge. So it's had a huge impact in the industry over the last 20 years, and we're really excited to see it grow and watch its impact on the industry. It's a farm evaluation competition, so it's a team competition. Students participate at the national contest in teams of 4. It's a very real world, very applied contest. So students go to a farm, they have received the records from that farm, read a questionnaire that the producer filled out. They have a chance to get boots on the ground and actually walk through the barn and observe what's going on at the farm. They interview the producer, they make a presentation, and they present it to a panel of judges. Then the judges are industry professionals. They are currently working in industry and are doing this on a day-to-day basis. And they do all that in 48 hours about, right? From the time they actually receive the records to the time that they stand up and participate. So a 2-day marathon event, but very applied, very realistic to what these students are going to want to do in the real world once they graduate. And a lot of our students that we see go through Dairy Challenge want to go into some sort of consulting role, whether that's in nutrition, veterinary services, reproduction, finances. We see a lot of students that are going out into the industry, and they're getting all of that training and all of that practice in the Dairy Challenge beforehand.
So I see here that Iowa State University and UW-Platteville are going to be co-hosting this year's Midwest Regional Dairy Challenge coming up here in February 15th through the 17th. Can you tell us more about what that Regional Dairy Challenge looks like?
Sure. It's really exciting to be able to, work with all the folks who are part of the Regional Planning Committee to talk through what we want to do, what we want to achieve for the students, what industry is looking for, and how we can, best help them to learn. The Midwest contest is a little bit different from the national contest in that the students are still working together as a team, but we're splitting them into teams with other students from other schools. And so we have an opportunity for students from our 2-year campuses or technical colleges working with students from the 4-year universities, whether that's an R1 big research university or more of the regional universities like UW-Platteville. And so we've been working to try to make sure that we have students from a wide variety of backgrounds and skill development, students who've just started to students who are looking at potentially competing to be on their school's national team. We've had the Midwest contest as a regional contest since 2005. So the first regional contest started in 2003, just after the Dairy Challenge started. That was up in the Northeast. And in 2006, the West and the South started. So right now, Midwest is the largest. We've recently gotten bigger than the Northeast. So it's really kind of exciting. We've got 17 different schools, and we're maxed out at 120 students. So there's still a lot of interest from the schools and from the students in being part of Dairy Challenge and learning not just what they think they know, but, figuring out what they don't know, and sometimes having to talk to folks from across different campuses when it comes, to the university students, but then also working with the mentors that come from the industry. So Michael, as being somebody in the industry, what do you see as the benefit of having the mentors be part of the Midwest?
Yeah, I think the Midwest has really kind of uniquely positioned itself. I think it's kind of amazing that we are in a position now where we have to cap the number of students that can come. I think that's a strong story about the Midwest dairy industry as a whole. The fact that we have as many students who are interested in coming and being part of this educational process. And part of fostering that educational growth is obviously bringing together not only the students, but people from universities as well as industry to mentor. And what our mentors do is they actually sit alongside these students and not necessarily give them the answer, but help them cultivate the tools so that they can find the correct answers, prioritize the most important thing that needs to be addressed on these farms that they're evaluating, help them put together partial budgets to try and justify, if there's a capital expense that comes with some sort of an improvement that we're going to recommend, is there a return on that investment that we're asking that farm to make? So I think that the mentors are there really to help foster that personal growth. And they also play kind of an interesting role as it relates to gelling these aggregate groups that we talked about before. I think one of the benefits of these regional events, not to take anything away from the national contest, is the fact that we have aggregated these teams before. So the fact that nearly half of the schools that come to the Midwest contest are 2-year schools, they may have a different educational experience than the students who are coming from 4-year schools. And not only that, they have different backgrounds geographically, experience-wise. The mentor takes on a lot of role in trying to make sure that that group gels together. But from a sponsorship standpoint, I'd like to see the students and how well they can actually navigate that sort of a very quick relationship building process. Because when you look at most consulting industry members at this point, we don't get to choose who we sit across the table from when we go to a team meeting for a dairy. So this idea of being put together with people who you maybe don't have much shared experience with, but still being able to work together and try and achieve a common goal, I think is a really, really beneficial and powerful part of the Midwest contest. And just to kind of piggyback on what we had talked about before with the idea of the industry having an input on what the programming looks like, the contest is the actual evaluation of the dairy and presentation of what might need to be improved is a big part of the contest. But alongside that, we put a lot of educational curricula together to help students acquire more knowledge. So one example of that would be the move towards more automation on farms. So we understand that when we try and introduce farms with automation, there may be new information that needs to be disseminated to these students to give them the skills to evaluate these dairies. So we've gone out to the robot producers and said, hey, can you give us someone from your company as well as a producer who's utilizing that technology? We're going to put a panel on. We want to give students the opportunity to not only be told a little bit about what's going on, but also have an opportunity to ask questions and gain more knowledge. So I think all of the regional contests have kind of done a good job of developing these programs. But I'm especially proud of what the Midwest contest has been able to do to assist the people who are either going to go back and be part of our thriving dairy industry, either on farm or in industry.
Yeah, just to piggyback off what Michael's saying there, I think, when we look at a lot of what employers are telling us at the university, what they want from students, it's not just the technical skills, but they really value those soft skills and problem solving and critical thinking and being able to work as a team. And all of that is so highly valued by employers. The regional contest in particular, although the national contest does that as well, it really stretches those students on their soft skills. They're taking people that are complete strangers and putting them together and having them, go through the ringer on this evaluation. And the successful teams are able to pull it off. So it's kind of like a perfect combination of really those technical skills, but also those soft skills as well. And I think that's hard to put a value on how important that can be.
So you all mentioned, volunteers, mentors, people that are helping to organize the contest, coordinate that. So it sounds like it takes a lot of legwork, right, to get this to be a successful program. Tell us what it takes to host this contest.
Well, first and foremost, it's important to have a supportive dairy industry, and we're really lucky in the Midwest that we have that. We have a really strong dairy industry here in the Midwest in general, but especially in Eastern Iowa, where we're going to be hosting this coming regional contest. So we were able to find, we have 3 farms that we're going to be using this year for host farms. So we were really able to tap into the community and find those farms there. We also, like, it takes a lot, what was it, a 1-to-1 ratio of volunteers to students? So it
Yep.
takes a lot of people power, and we have enough industry personnel between Iowa, Wisconsin, and the surrounding states that we really have the people there that are excited about Dairy Challenge and helping support the industry through supporting these students. So that's a really important part of it. We are, of course, always seeking additional sponsors and volunteers, so we'll put a plug in for that. But honestly, I mean, if you shoot me an email or Michael an email or Tara or any one of us, we're more than happy to get people put in touch with the right person to get them signed up for whatever. That's how I started mentoring when I was in industry, is I got in contact with somebody who was involved and they put me in the right direction. That's how Michael and I met originally back in the few years ago now. So we're a volunteer organization. We're run by people who just really care about the mission of this project. And so if you get in touch with a Dairy Challenge person, they are pretty good at kicking you up the line to the person you need to talk to. And Michael, you were the volunteer coordinator for the Midwest for a while. Do you want to talk about what the different volunteer roles are, as well as some of the benefits that people can expect from volunteering?
Yep, absolutely. So, like Gail said, it takes over 100 volunteers to have the Midwest Regional Contest run smoothly. And in most cases, we well exceed that number. It's not hard to have people volunteer their time and energy to come in and be a part of this contest. And when you take a step back and think about that, it actually was kind of shocking to me the first time I was the volunteer coordinator. We're taking 100 individuals who have full-time jobs. We don't pay them anything to come to the contest. We don't pay for their hotel rooms. They do everything to come and assist us in fostering this next generation of dairy professionals. But when we look at the way that the labor kind of works itself out with the contest, the biggest pool that we pull from is our mentors. So we like to have 1 to 2 industry professionals per team to work with them to be able to analyze the data, work through what they saw when they're on farm. And in our best effort, we try and split them up so those mentors come from different sectors of the industry. So when you look at the cross section of the dairy industry, we're pulling people, like Gail said, we're pulling vets, we're pulling finance people, we're pulling nutritionists, we're pulling reproductive specialists, we're pulling people from technology companies. Basically, if you have anything to do with a modern dairy farm, we're pulling those people in. But there are definitely people out there who don't necessarily feel comfortable maybe digging into a dairy comp backup. And we have plenty of other roles for them. We have volunteer roles where people can assist on farm. We have people who come in and are the judges. So they actually watch the presentations and give the students feedback on maybe would have deprioritized that specific point, or I think you should have focused more on this point, or maybe you missed something else. And then we have a whole committee that's working together to just keep the administration running. So we have judge coordinator, volunteer coordinator. We have a whole PR committee who's going through and taking photos as we're on farm or working through through the process of going through the data to try and really build a story of what Dairy Challenge is. And the people who give their time, I think the companies who ultimately support them to give their time get a lot back from that. And when we look at my previous company and my current company, when you look at recruiting efforts, Dairy Challenge is very, very high, if not the highest priority, because there's no other program that I'm aware of that prepares students to do the jobs that we want them to do, to be able to go to farm and not only identify problems, but communicate those problems and possible solutions to producers. So I think if you talk to any of the high-level sponsors who have the opportunity to meet with these students, and it's not just high-level sponsors who have the opportunity to meet with students, but especially ones who have really invested to have additional opportunities to speak to students or give presentations, the return on investment on the money that we give to Dairy Challenge is infinitesimal return in terms of the students that we get, the candidates, the new hires, and the experience that they come with when they do come to work with us. So it takes a village to put it on. But I think when you look at it, everybody's benefiting. The students are benefiting from the experience. The industry is benefiting from the experience all around. It is just a great experience.
I mean, from a sponsorship perspective too, forget about interviews, right? This is like you're getting a front row seat to looking at these students, how they work in the trenches. These are, like we said, we cap it at 120. There's 17 schools in the Midwest that are invited to participate. You get to see how the best students from each of these schools in the Midwest in their dairy programs get to perform in real time. And so it's a lot more than you'd ever see from somebody in an interview, whether you're looking to hire somebody, who's going to be graduating that spring or even looking for potential interns. There's nothing really quite like it. And Tara, you deal a lot with the sponsors in the finance side for the Midwest Regional Contest. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the benefits of sponsoring?
Well, absolutely. I mean, Michael did a really good job of talking about what kind of impact, being able to come in and volunteer, the opportunity for industry, whether it's, folks from the farm, because we have judges that come straight from the farm, and the farms themselves, so our host farms, they're benefiting as well. They're giving not only of their time and giving up some of their information and getting maybe a little uncomfortable with the students doing the evaluating, but they get to help in the training process. That just by being able to be on their farms, it's helping in the training process, and so they're giving back in that way. But when we look at specifically for the sponsors, it costs a little bit more than $600 per student in order to be able to put on the contest. But to kind of put that in perspective, I mean, that's today's dollars, right? So 20 years ago, that probably looked a little bit different. And with the pandemic, things have changed. But I'd also say that we have really, really strong industry support. We weren't willing, and this by we, I mean, the coaches, the students, but especially the industry weren't willing to back down during the pandemic. We hosted virtual events and we had students who were competing virtually, which was kind of an interesting process. And I know that everybody's so glad to be able to be back on farm and working together and being in aggregate teams. But that cost is partially taken care of by the students. A very, very small registration cost the universities put forward. That takes care of the students' hotels, that takes care of meals, that takes care of, helping to make sure that there's boots and vests when they're on farm. And it helps to make sure that we have a place for them to gather and network and have a good time with sponsors and volunteers. And that all happens in sometimes coordinated efforts. So putting on, meals where they can sit together with industry sponsors who are who are working in areas that the students are interested in, but also things like being able to see them actually present. So being room monitors and things like that. So when a sponsor comes in at any level, they have the opportunity to see student resumes. We make sure that those get out to our sponsors. We make sure that if they want to be part of our career and innovation fair, they can have a booth there. We make sure that they have an opportunity to get in front of the students to talk about what some of the new technologies that their company is providing, as well as just that networking that happens during some of the fun events that we have as well. So when we put on a contest, we think of all of the things that not only are going to give the students a good opportunity, but also make sure that we've got as much networking that can happen face-to-face as possible.
Yeah, Terry, you talk about COVID. I think over the past year, we've heard a lot about rebuilding, right? Rebuilding extension programs or research or classrooms or whatever. We did not miss a step after COVID with Dairy Challenge. I think that just speaks to the value of the program. We had the students who wanted to participate, the schools that wanted to participate, the industry people that wanted to sponsor. We were, a lot of places were still last year, and even this year, different organizations, different events, you're seeing numbers drag. The Midwest Regional Contest was back at capacity last year in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So I think that just is a testimony to how impactful students know this contest is and how impactful the industry knows this contest is.
So as coaches, how do you prepare those students competing? I know you mentioned a little bit about getting them with the mentors or practice farms. Kind of walk us through what that looks like.
So every coach is going to do it a little bit differently. And I even did it differently when I was at Ridgetown versus now that I'm here at Iowa State. So Tara, I guess we've actually done some joint practices with each other.
Yep.
But so those of you who, anybody listening who was a dairy science from Iowa State alumnus probably remembers ANS 435, Applied Dairy Farm Evaluation, yeah. It's our capstone dairy science course, but animal science students are allowed to take it as well. And even some ag business or ag study students we have take 435. And so that's kind of the classroom component of talking about consulting and different aspects of the farm system and how they all fit together. But in addition, so I have students who take my 435 class who aren't on the Dairy Challenge team. So the students who want to be on the team, they're also expected to do some Saturday practices as well. So some of that might just be, we sit in a classroom and we talk about dairy comp or PC Dart, and kind of how to look at records or how to look at finances. And then I try to also get students on farm for a couple weekends in that winter semester or spring semester. So that's another way that you see industry support from the national level all the way down to the super local level. I always have farms in the state who are eager to have our students come on and help us out with practices there. So it's really a team effort on my part. What about you, Tara?
So yeah, we've gone through a lot of different iterations of classes and every faculty member, I think, thinks about, okay, how can we bring more of the industry into our classroom? We have focused on different things over time in the class. So we've had a dairy records analysis class. We have a senior level dairy cattle management class. We have all of our ag business classes that help to kind of build on that. And I think because dairy is very strong, of course, in the Midwest, but at UW-Platteville, we have a lot of students that come here interested in dairy, whether they're dairy science specific majors or not. We end up seeing them in the classroom and we see them in our organizations like Dairy Club and things like that. And we sort of start to pick up on the fact that they've got some real strong skills. And so we come to the Midwest contest, usually between 6 and 8 students, depending on exactly where we're traveling to and things like that. And just kind of give the students an opportunity to see what Dairy Challenge is all about and figure out their strengths and things like that. Because a lot of them have a lot of on-farm experience, they're bringing that into the classroom. And then we do try to get out to a couple of farms. We have some, just like Gail mentioned, some really awesome industry support on the farm side of things. A couple of really dedicated alumni, not just of our program, but locally also UW-Madison. There's some alumni of Dairy Challenge that are local to us that love to have us on their farms. And so it's interesting for me because I can evaluate a farm much better now because I've been on the same farm over the last, 10 or so years. But to see it through the student's eyes every time is so interesting because they pick up on things that, that we maybe missed or that we start having conversations about. And so we try to have some guest speakers to come in, and then we take advantage of the resources that are on the Dairy Challenge website. Honestly, the industry has done an amazing job especially because of COVID, but even without COVID, I think being able to have webinars, being able to have some targeted resources and learning has been super helpful because it's looking at it at a very specific way, but also we target some of our ag business students because having that kind of financial mindset, like Michael mentioned before, whether we're doing partial budgeting or looking specifically at some of the ratios and things like that. As a dairy science faculty member, those are all new things that I'm learning alongside my students, but I'm never going to perfect any of that. So we really try to take advantage of some of our other faculty members as well and set up specific times to say, how do you evaluate this? What does this number mean? What does that number mean? And then we talked about the soft skills before. I think we spend a lot of time on that too. It's like, okay, here's some real basic things. How do you present it to someone in a way that they're going to listen to you? Because we can't just go in and say, you're doing it wrong. We have to say, here's what we see. Here's what the data tells us. Here's what the numbers mean. And now our recommendation is this, but you can do with it what you will. And I think that even those skills are super important. How to put together a PowerPoint. You wouldn't think that would be important, but it is even still. We have students who just don't have an idea how to do that. And so keeping up with how students are learning and how to best approach them and all of those kinds of things. We've talked about that a lot, as a planning committee is like, what are students looking for? What is the next generation of employee going to be like? Not just what employers want, but how do we kind of work together to make sure that we're training the best individual? And so we try to take some of that into account. I probably don't go out to as many farms and do the cool things that Gail does in terms of being very, very specific about evaluation, but we try to take advantage of all of the expertise that's around us and it's just a lot of fun. I really enjoy being a coach, and also being able to be on the planning committee and seeing both sides of it.
Yeah, I didn't even get into, or we haven't talked today much about the Dairy Challenge Academy. Dairy Challenge Academy is kind of it's an educational side, non-competitive activity, I guess you could call it, at the national contest. So it's kind of in some ways similar to a regional contest. You have the mentors, the aggregate groups, but it's not competitive. And so one of the things that I try to do, because I have a blend of students usually that participate, some from dairy farms or who, grandparents had a dairy farm or grew up adjacent to the dairy industry. And then I've had students participate who have had no dairy background at all until they started college and they were like, this industry is a lot of fun. So getting students to be able to go to Academy and kind of get their feet wet. They can go to Academy twice and the regional contest twice before they're not allowed to do those anymore. So I try to dip into the students who I think might be interested, even their sophomore and junior year, to kind of get them going and get them excited about the industry. I've got a pipeline I'm kind of building to, in addition to the actual national team. But it's great for those students because they are there looking for internships. And every time you can get a student off campus, as fun as Ames is in Platteville, every time you can get them to a farm, they really have a great time with that. And so it's usually not too hard to convince a few students who you think have potential to kind of string along for a couple practices there.
So we talked a lot about the student scale and Tara, but what are the producers' perspective on all of this as a host farm, as practice farms? What are they saying about it?
We have host farms that really want to be host farms, and because they are getting free consulting. They are, you're going to hear from the students, but you're also going to hear from the judges that are, they are veterinarians, nutritionists, reproductive specialists, financial people, all from industry. So there's a lot of benefit to being a host farm. And even just our practice farms, they love having the students on, hearing the feedback from the students. I think a lot of the progressive dairies really appreciate that feedback because they're always trying to be ahead of the curve on the industry. And so when they have an opportunity to get some additional feedback that can help them just be better at doing business, I think they see the value in that. So I'll put in another shameless plug and say if anybody's listening who would like to be a host farm in Iowa, I will take volunteers. Or not for the contest. We have our contest farms situated already, but in terms of practice farms, I will put dairy science students on your farm if you want me to.
Great. Well, you all provided a lot of great information here today, giving us that kind of real world experience of what that student is doing as they're participating in the Dairy Challenge and ways that our industry can help support the Dairy Challenge contest, whether that's through volunteering or sponsoring. So sounds like a great experience for all of our dairy industry and the future of our dairy industry. So as we wrap up today, where can our audience learn more about the Dairy Challenge?
Dairy Challenge has a website. It's really easy. You just type in Dairy Challenge into Google and it's the first thing that comes up, dairychallenge.org. And everything you need to know about Dairy Challenge, from the history to what the students do in terms of the on-farm evaluation. We mentioned resources. Some of those resources are out there and they're open to anybody who wants to take a look. Sponsorships. So we've got information for farms that want to sponsor, information for industry professionals and those alumni of Dairy Challenge that are listening. It's the 20th anniversary. We'd love to have you guys really step up and sponsor some students. $600, that's a drop in the bucket. Go ahead and sponsor a student, or get your team together and sponsor a student together. And we'd love to be able to give some shout outs to folks who are doing that, because you'll get recognition as well. But I think our website just has everything you could ever want to know about Dairy Challenge and what's happening. But we're always looking for folks to help out, sponsorships, volunteers, future host farms, things like that.
And we're also a group of Dairy Challenge nerds on this podcast right here. So feel free to drop any one of us an email and we will talk your ear off about it.
Absolutely.
It takes really passionate people to make this contest longstanding 20 years. And so as we look forward to the next 20 years, you really want to make sure you have passionate people just like you three here today. So appreciate that. Any last comments as we wrap up?
Well, thanks, Jen, for giving us an opportunity to talk about the Midwest Dairy Challenge and sharing our passion.
Yeah, we're really excited to be hosting in Dubuque this February. Hopefully the weather's okay. It seems like every Midwest contest, you're guaranteed to have the coldest day of the year. So I apologize to the people of Dubuque in advance. But February 15th through the 17th, we're excited to be hosting and to kind of showcase the dairy industry of the state of Iowa.
And I guess just one final thanks to everybody who has been involved with Dairy Challenge to this point. I mean, I think when you look at, like you said, the organization that has grown as it has the last 20 years, it's not just the three of us. I mean, there's just a whole lot of people who put a lot of time and effort into moving this thing forward. And I don't think we can, give enough credit to everybody who's had even a small part in making Dairy Challenge a success.
Well, again, thanks for being on our podcast here today. And we want to thank our listeners, and we look forward to visiting with you on the next Dairy News and Views from ISU.
This institution is an equal opportunity provider. For the full non-discrimination statement or combination inquiries, go to www.extension.iastate.edu/diversity/ext.